One thing that I've noticed in our times is that while the evil seems to become greater and more obvious, so do the lies and the falsehoods that evil is pushing. For those who just willingly open their eyes, they'll be able to see this. We've been told that there is a crisis of food and hunger in Gaza. The truth is, this is something that Hamas is entirely responsible for. But also, they're concocting a crisis in order to put pressure on Israel to give them the only chance they have of survival, which is a ceasefire. And they know that the only way they can do that is by putting pressure on Israel through the international community by creating a crisis. But the lies are becoming more and more obvious. And more than that, the international media are responsible for parroting these lies. And Hamas know they can count on them. We saw a picture that went around the world of a viral, heartbreaking image of what was meant to be the face of famine of a child looking utterly malnourished. David Collier, however, investigative journalist, has done research into this. He's a real detective. And he said in his new post that this picture, which was posted by so many major media channels, newspapers, this is not the face of famine, he said. It's a face of a medically vulnerable child whose suffering was hijacked and weaponized, first by Hamas and then by global media. Let me explain. Unless you've been hiding under a rock all week, you would have seen the viral images of Mohammed, David wrote, the child victim of the Gazan famine, quote unquote. The image used by most of these outlets was licensed by Anadolu, a Turkish state-run news agency headquartered in Ankara. The photos were taken by the Gaza-based photographer Ahmed Jihad Ibrahim Alarini. His middle name's Jihad. And uploaded to his Instagram account on the 22nd of July, a day before the Daily Express splashed it across their front page. But, in fact, another Gazan-based account, Saeed Mohammed, had shared similar images even earlier. The global frenzy began on the 23rd of July, when the Daily Express ran the image of Mohammed on its front page. The article uses the image of Mohammed to promote the narrative of a mass famine in Gaza, which I want to talk about more, by the way, in a moment. Quote, it is now thought that 1/3 of Gaza's 2.1 million population has not eaten for several days, while a quarter faces famine-like conditions, with 100,000 women and children suffering from acute malnutrition. Within hours, almost every major outlet was using this image to tell the same story. Sky News, CNN, The Guardian, Daily Mail, New York Times, and The Times UK. Here's an image for you to see. This was taken as gospel, quite frankly. And they ran with it, reinforcing the message Gaza is gripped by mass starvation, and this image is the proof. Except this image proves none of it. Wider and unpublished pictures show Mohammed's healthy brother, Jude, who was born on 18th of April and is 2022 and is 3 years old. Mohammed was born on 23rd of December 2023, just 2 months after October 7th. Here's that image for you to see. That's his older brother there, Jude. So I'll just zoom in for you so you can see it clearly, okay? He is clearly not malnourished. What we can see from the pictures is that both Mohammed's mother and his older brother look healthy and are not suffering from any type of starvation that would be necessary to cause the thinness suffered by Mohammed. This is visible in multiple images we have in our possession. The published images in all the various news broadcasts and publications have either been deliberately cropped to remove the image of the healthy brother, blurred him into obscurity, or the journalists have only chosen to use photos in which the brother is not visible at all. Mohammed Zakaria Ayub al-Matouk was born with serious genetic disorders. He's needed specialist medical supplements since birth. Like previous examples of the media using starving children going back to summer 2024, the images of a child suffering underlying and hidden health issues. A medical report issued in May 2025 by the Basma Association for Relief in Gaza states that Mohammed has been diagnosed with cerebral palsy, a group of neurological disorders affecting movement, muscle tone, and posture. The report notes that Mohammed suffers from hypoxemia, low oxygen in the blood, possibly linked to a suspected genetic disorder inherited in an autosomal recessive pattern. There is no argument here. I've seen a copy of this report, but obviously won't produce in full here a child's medical diagnosis. It was signed by Dr. Saeed Mohammed Al-Nassan on the 20th of May 2025. And here he has shown the signing of it, so the date on it there, and the stamp used on the report. This revelation raises serious issues of media integrity. The Daily Express picked up a viral image circulating online and published it without verification or context, a textbook example of clickbait journalism, where emotional impact is prioritised over everything else. The BBC, as per usual, went a step further. The BBC spoke, quote-unquote, to his mother, Huda Yassin al-Matuk, and produced a 64-second interview that somehow failed to disclose that Mohammed was a child born with genetic problems and complex medical dependencies. Even in the BBC video, the mother alludes to this, referencing a prolonged struggle including physiotherapy sessions that helped him stand. The curvature of the spine, another key clue tying the child to a CP diagnosis. But the BBC narrator never addresses this, leaving the audience to believe the heartbreaking physical condition we are seeing is the result of widespread famine. This is not journalism. This is the UK's state media deliberately pushing a deceptive narrative that only serves to benefit Hamas and create fake news. And by the way, I would add that the BBC is respected globally for some reason. So it's not just confined to impact in the UK. The story being told through legacy media outlets such as the New York Times is that Mohammed's father was killed while going out to collect food. Again, to underline the Gaza hunger tragedy narrative. Here you can see the New York Times reporting this. Saying here, they and his brother live in a tent on Gaza. Mohammed's father was killed last year when he went to seek food. This has been reported without any attempt at verification. And from the death certificate, I can see that father Zakaria Ayub al-Matuk was killed on the 28th of October 2024. From online sources, it turns out that Mohammed's father was killed in Jabalia in what appears to be a targeted strike on Al-Kasabib Street. Okay. So here we can see here, a number of citizens were killed in Al-Kasabib Street, and it lists his name. So David is really very much a detective in his work here to find out the truth behind the lies. He says, we can also see that Hamas were attacking the IDF in precisely that spot at the time. There you go, as you can see, on the 26th and 27th of October. Okay, between the 25th of October and the 29th, Israel lost 6 soldiers in that area. In this Hamas footage, which shows wide-angle views of part of the same street on the 26th of October, it's not possible to see exactly where Mohammed's father would have been looking for food. I'm going to be careful how much I play of this because of YouTube censorship concerns. Whether or not he was armed, Mohammed's father died on a battlefield. So it's clearly a lie. It's an outright lie, where Hamas was actively attacking Israeli forces. Whatever the truth about looking for food, Hamas bears responsibility for bringing the conflict to that street, and the media ignored this context entirely. So, once again, we're seeing the utter nonsense that is being hurled at us, not just by Hamas, but a complicit media. And then this comes to the famine narrative. We're told about a famine narrative right now before our eyes, and we need to unpack this. Time and again, the most widely circulated images of starving children in Gaza have turned out to involve children with serious underlying medical conditions. Of course, the images are heartbreaking, but we must stay grounded in reality. This is a war zone, and Hamas is actively using its civilian population as pawns in a global propaganda campaign. They couldn't care less about these children's lives. Israel cares far more about their lives than Hamas ever would. Hamas use their life with disdain. as pawns for their own Islamist death cult ends. But let's be clear, Hamas, as David says, cannot afford to lose control over aid distribution, not if it intends to remain the ruling power in post-war Gaza. Channeling or controlling aid has always been one of the terrorist group's most reliable sources of income, and that's why it's been essential for Hamas to discredit the US-Israeli GHF aid program and portray it as a failure. This has included an almost daily pantomime of unverified claims that hundreds have been killed in Israeli attacks while queuing for aid. Yet in the most documented conflict zone in history, credible video evidence remains conspicuously absent, despite claims of daily occurrences. Worse still, UN agencies and international NGOs operating in Gaza are riddled with staff affiliated with terrorist groups. Whenever Hamas comes under pressure, these agencies issue carefully timed statements and take actions that conveniently align with Hamas's strategic goals, which are then amplified by the army of anti-Israel activists embedded in legacy media. We saw this during the All Eyes on Rafah campaign in early 2024, when the IDF closed in on key leadership and hostages located there. The famine narrative is just the latest act in the play. There's plenty of public information showing that significant quantities of food are entering Gaza, and I'm going to show you more just in a second. But with local media firmly under the control of Hamas, none of this gets reported. Instead of helping facilitate aid delivery, UN agencies have imposed impossible conditions, stalling convoys and leaving hundreds of trucks abandoned, their contents rotting just a short distance from those in need. At times, the UN has even insisted Hamas be allowed to protect aid workers, effectively demanding that the terror group retain access to and control over humanitarian supplies. Only recently, under mounting international scrutiny, has the UN begun to slightly shift course. Have a look at this clip here of Adon Levy. He posted this just a few hours ago, so you can see what's actually going on in Gaza.
This is a monument to the catastrophic failure of the United Nations to deliver aid into Gaza. Hundreds upon hundreds of pallets of aid just rotting in the sun instead of being delivered to the people who need it. The UN prefers blaming Israel, bitching about Israel. The reality, incompetence. And it's blaming Israel to cover up for that criminal negligence. The UN should do its job. Get the food to the people who need it, make sure that Hamas cannot steal it, and then pressure Hamas to accept a ceasefire that will release the hostages who are being starved inside the dungeons of Gaza, relinquish power, and let everyone put this horrible war that Hamas started behind us.
Eitan Fishberger, who's there at the site, has posted this. There's an endless sea of bottled water among the aid the UN refuses to distribute. I alone stood in front of about 15,000. It was 104 Fahrenheit today in Gaza. The people could have really used that water. And here we go, another clip of him.
I don't know if you guys have ever seen what 600 trucks worth of aid looks like. But this is what it looks like. It is a lot of aid. Wow. It's all going to waste because the UN refuses to distribute it. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Look at this. Look at all that. Literally mountains of aid.
And you know what? I've got to hand it to Hamas. They are clever. They are doing this because it's their last chance. By creating this concocted crisis, by not distributing the aid, they can then tell the international community, look at our people, they're suffering, and the international community can pressure Israel to cease fire in Gaza, and we must not let them succeed. The key thing that needs to be understood, above all else, is that all of this, all the suffering that's occurring in this area that no one wants to see, is a result of Hamas and the choices that their governing body chose from October 7th, before and afterwards. Had they not chosen to go in and do what they did on October 7th, had they not chosen to take all these people hostages, and by the way, why is no one talking about that? Hamas are holding dozens of Israel's people hostage inside of Gaza. Right now, Israel's supplying aid to a people of Gaza, the majority of whom supported what happened on October 7th. And none of these problems would be happening Whether it's distribution of aid, the issues of aid, any suffering war in the first place, if Hamas and the Palestinian cause hadn't chosen to wage genocidal war against Israel since and even before its inception. That's what needs to be understood here ultimately. And we must not lose sight either of the people who are suffering through no fault of the choices that they made. We have to call this what it is. The UN, UNRWA, and other NGOs are not prioritizing the safety of Gazan civilians, or indeed getting aid to a population they maintain are in desperate and immediate need of food. Instead, it seems they're prioritizing a political agenda that aligns with and ensures the survival of Hamas. They're not neutral, they are enablers. As David concludes, the UN aid agencies won't deliver aid, the journalists won't do their jobs. In a propaganda war this calculated and brutal, it was vital that our media act as a check on the lies. Not just for Israel's sake, but for the Gazan civilians caught in the middle. When legacy media outlets become mouthpieces for radical Islamist groups, out of ideology, ignorance or cowardice, it isn't just a journalistic collapse, it is a moral disgrace. And how outrageous it is to use people's suffering and use the empathy in their hearts to twist them into doing things to undermine Israel, to undermine the Jews, to try and destroy the Jewish people's self-determination, security and existence. Because that's all this is. It's not about empathy and concern, I'm afraid to say. It's pretty sick to manipulate people's hearts and minds and people's suffering in order to hate on a people. I can't really think of many things more morally repulsive. Before we finish, I just want to share with you something really important. We are told that Israel's actions are the cause of the Israeli-Arab conflict, but we've just released a groundbreaking documentary proving that Arab Islamic Jew hatred far predates Israel's re-establishment. This is a critical fact that everyone needs to learn about. Have a watch of our trailer for our new JTV Plus documentary entitled Arab Anti-Semitism Before Israel's Re-Establishment. Picture yourself, it's 1834 and you're a Jew living in Tzfat, which is a northern city in Israel, then under the Ottoman Empire. Your family is part of this ancient city's spiritual heart for generations. You study Torah, you trade in the market, and live quietly among your Arab neighbours. But one day, a mob storms your street, shouting, "Kill the Jews!" Your home is looted, your synagogue burned, your loved ones beaten. This isn't about Israel. Israel won't exist for 114 years. This isn't about settlements, the IDF, or the 1948 displacements. This is raw, violent hatred aimed at you for being a Jew. And it's not just in Palestine, it's part of a centuries-old story of anti-Semitism woven into Arab and Islamic history, from the dawn of Islam to the streets of Hebron. The claim that this conflict began with Israel's creation, the Nakba, or modern policies, is a farce, a distortion that collapses under history's magnifying glass. Welcome to JTV Plus. I'm Ollie Annisfeld, and today we're uncovering a history too often buried, the relentless anti-Semitism among Arabs in Palestine before 1948, rooted in a broader Arab and Muslim hostility that began with Islam's inception in the 7th century. To watch this JTV Plus documentary and access much more premium content, click on the link in the video description.